All right, everyone, we've got a table with some parts on it, and we're going to start with a KTM 2021 890 Adventure R build. And I've never done this before in terms of filming, so just bear with me. I get a lot of information off of YouTube, and I thought I might go ahead and pass some of that info on and some of my builds as well. So I'm hoping that this will be the first of a series of videos, and doing a review on each one of these products and in the install as well. So what I've got planned is to weigh each and every item that I put on the bike, and then weigh the items that I take off or the items that I replace with these, to see where we end up in terms of net gain in weight. And I'm hoping that it's going to be minimal. So I'll just kind of run you through what I've got here. We've got more parts on the way, but first thing I'm kind of starting off with is a Black Dog CycleWorks skid plate. I looked at a lot of reviews online and decided that I felt like this was the best way to go based on their design and the other designs that are out there. Skid plate looks great. These are just stickers that are laid on here just so you can kind of see that this is made in the USA. It's 3/16 inch thick aluminum, good padding, as you can see here, for that's going underneath the motor. We're also doing a cat delete. This is from Aero Exhaust. And if you can look down at the pipe, I'll show you this later. But I don't know that the video is capturing that, but it's straight through. But this resonator chamber does have some holes in there with a little bit of packing in there to kind of enhance the sound, is what I'm assuming. I really don't know. We're taking the stock mirrors off. We're using the Rottweiler Performance mirror mounts that are here. And I also got these mirrors from them that are from Constructors Racing Group. We're going to do a finger clutch from Camel ADV, and also adding the a stand plate to make the stand more substantial for soft ground. I'm going to pivot pegs, and those are made in Austria. And I use those on my dirt bike as well. I really like them. This is from Alt Rider. It's a headlight guard, and it's made in America. And this is X-Trig. So when my Scott steering stabilizer gets here, this is the PHDH DS system. And I think this is made in Germany. So I like the fact that everything I've got here, this is made in Germany, this is made in the USA, this is made in Germany. These are made in Austria, as I said. I'm not sure where these are made. The mirrors are made in California. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Depends on where you stand on California. And the Aero Exhaust, to my knowledge, is made in the USA. And as I said before, the skid plate was made in the USA. And I will check on the exhaust when I put it on. All right, we're going to start out removing the factory skid plate, and you're going to need an 8mm socket. That's what I use rather than the Torx when I can get by with it. And then these over here, you'll have to go ahead and use a Torx bit for, and I think those are a T27. We're going to come around, and the first thing you need to do is remove this little hose that's right in here. So we'll just see if we can pop it out. Looks like I'm going to have to get something from the other side, so I'll grab a screwdriver to release this if I can't get it with my fingernail. Yeah, let's go grab a screwdriver. All right, after looking at this hose and how it's put in, I decided I'm not going to take a screwdriver. It looks like there's no clamp on it, so I can just pull it off like that. And now we're ready to start removing all the torque screws and drop the skid plate. Let's get started. So some of you guys will fault me for this, but when I'm removing things, I will use an impact just because it makes it a little bit faster. And what I will do when I'm reinstalling is I'll typically install by hand. But as you can see, the impact makes much faster work of things. But I'm going to have to move the front tire to get to those others. Looks like we're going to need a 10mm wrench on the back of this one as well to hold it. So we'll grab the wrench and adjust the front tire so we can get these other Torx heads out. So sometimes I get lazy, and the quickest thing I could grab instead of a wrench was these pliers. And I'll go ahead and tell you that these are fantastic for carrying in your tool bag. So I just figured I'd take this opportunity to discuss these. They are made in Germany. I think you pronounce it Knipex. And I don't know if you can see on the camera, but these go from 10mm to 40mm. And you just push this button and then they slide, and you can do it one-handed as well. So that's what I'm going to be using to hold these bolts here. So one thing I noticed, just to take note of when you're reinstalling everything, is these two bolts over here are shorter. They're the ones that have the nuts that go in on the side. I'm not sure if we'll reuse those with the Black Dog skid plate or not. There's going to be some rubber bushings that will be removed and discarded. So okay, so we got the factory skid plate off, and before we install the Black Dog plate, we are going to just kind of discuss a couple of the differences of these plates. And you know, this is just my opinion. Everybody's got an opinion, but if you'll look at the factory plate, I went ahead and weighed it, and it's 2.1 pounds. And let's just see, if you look at the thickness of it, so we're at 2.8 millimeters. You could see that. So it's 2.8 millimeters thick. And, you know, just truthfully, when you look at the robustness of the Black Dog CycleWorks plate, you'll see it's much more robust. And they advertise that this thing is 3/16 of an inch thick, and it's powder coated, and so it's 5.44 millimeters thick is what I've got. I'm not smart enough to convert that to metric, but let's go ahead and see how much it weighs. So we'll tap the scale here. Alright, it looks like 6.8 pounds. So let me check this out one more time. I don't have anything to, we'll set the camera down. Okay, so we're at 10.8 pounds. I didn't let the scale reset. So 10.8 pounds for the Black Dog CycleWorks skid plate, as well as the mounting hardware. So this is where the opinion part comes in. Sorry for the bad camera work, but anyway, you've got, basically an 8 or 9 pound difference in terms of the weights of these plates. If I were riding strictly on the street and gravel roads, to me, I don't think it's worth it. I wouldn't add the extra weight, but if you're going to be using the adventure bike for what it was meant for, as an adventure bike, and you are going to be riding in the woods, I definitely think it is a substantial upgrade to switch the skid plate. So, and again, you can kind of look and see the thickness, how this is cut, the welds in the corners. I mean, the welding's excellent. So, after we install the, or delete the cat and put the other cat on, we'll do the install, and we'll discuss the fit and finish. Okay, we're starting the delete for the cat, and I don't want to bore you with watching me wrench, so I went ahead and kind of started loosening things up and removing them. I'm just going to kind of walk you around and show you some of the things you'll need. You're going to need a T45 Torx. I recommend an 8mm wrench, 10mm socket, 10mm wrench, and then you're also going to need a T27 Torx. So you need to remove the chain guard at the front. After looking at this, I really think I'm going to switch to something that's more open in design and aluminum. If you can see, there's a lot of gunk in there, and I can see that getting built up and not looking very good, causing premature wear on the chain as well. But you can see where the bolts go in. You also have to remove the linkage for the shifter. What I've done is I've used a strap to hold the shifter up so I can get to the bolts that are back in here. So you can see that bolt. You're going to have to remove the bolts that go here, and this bolt will need to be loosened up. You've got another bolt here that'll need to be loosened up. And we've got the clamp, and then also, if you can see, there's a bolt right back in here that will need to be loosened up. And you've got to take the kickstand off and get to this bolt here once you take the kickstand off. So that's what I'm going to be working on now, and we'll get it taken off, and we'll come back. Okay, so I just realized you're also going to need a T47, I think is what I used, to loosen the swing arm up. It kind of throws the peg back, and that way the kickstand will come out, and then you can get to this bolt that's right here, and we'll start removing it now. Okay, so this is the factory KTM cat. And if you can notice on top, it does have a spark arrestor included. If you remove this, your bike is supposed to be for off-road use only. They put this on to meet emission standards. So let's see how much this weighs. We'll put it on the scale, and it looks like we're at just over 6 pounds. And we're replacing it with the Aero mid pipe. I've read a lot of great reviews on this pipe. It's not a typical straight through pipe because it does have a resonator on it, and it is made in Italy. It's all TIG welded, as you can see. And if we look, let me get the flashlight. If you look down in it, you can see that it does have that resonator included. But I did notice that in the instructions from the manufacturer, it says that at some point the fiber material will degrade, and you need to change the whole pipe. So I don't know how long that will take, but that is just something that you need to consider if you decide to make this change. So it looks like we've got about a 4-pound weight savings. So let's get it installed. So for installing the Aero, they supplied a U-nut and a hex head to go right here under this frame mount, and which is behind your kickstand. But I opted to not follow the directions. I mean, that's going to be up to you, because I wanted to use the factory hardware. I don't see any reason really not to use the factory hardware in this situation. You're losing one mount on the other side, because you can see the Cat has one, it's got 1, 2, and then 3 mounting locations, and you really only have this one mounting location for the Arrow mid pipe. So so anyway, I removed the hardware on the other side and utilized the little spacers that you have here, and so I use them over here, and so I'm just going to tighten everything down. And this is actually going to be a blank space as well. I'm not sure if I'll leave that rubber bushing in or not, but for right now, I think I'm going to leave it in. So Arrow has a particular order they want you to tighten everything up in. So you're going to start with the clamp on the header pipe, and then we'll move over to the other side and tighten the support bracket. So we just snugged that down pretty good. You need to make sure that you've got your seal or your gasket and everything lined up before you start tightening those down, because you don't want to crush that gasket and end up having an exhaust leak. So make sure you got that taken care of, and then we can move to the other side of the bike. And we're going to tighten this one right here. This one requires a 10mm if you are going to keep the factory hardware. So okay, now after we've completed that, then we're going to tighten up the other gasket, which is leading to the silencer, and then we'll tighten the silencer up. And this again is an 8mm head, and so just on this wrench is pretty easy to get into here. So we just got that kind of snug. So what this is doing, the way this clamp is made, is it's just pulling the pipes together, and it's compressing that seal in there to keep you from getting or having an exhaust leak. And then we'll move back here to the back. Sorry about the light. And we're going to finish snugging the silencer down. And once we do that, we will be finished with the install, and we'll crank it up, see how it runs. So they don't recommend this at Arrow, but this is just something that I'm going to do just to make sure. I'm going to start the motor up and just kind of check for exhaust leaks before I put the skid plate back on, make sure that I didn't do any damage to the gaskets in these two locations. So we'll crank it up. That way the motor is going to be cold, and I can kind of see if we've got an exhaust leak, and we can rectify that if we need to before putting the skid plate back on. So let's crank it up. Maybe it'll sound different too. Let's see. All right, we've got it neutral. Let's start it up and check for these exhaust leaks. Okay, for the Black Dog CycleWorks skid plate, we need to keep this hardware off of the factory mount. So you can just take it off with an 8mm. Then we will reinstall it on the Black Dog skid plate. So in preparation for installing the skid plate, you've got to put these U-nuts on. And so this is the front of the plate. You can tell by the way it's written. And these are the 6mm. You'll want to put those on each corner. And they just snap on. And so you want the nut side back. So you'll just slide it into position. And it doesn't take much force, but once you get it on there, you can readjust. On the bottom section, you're going to use the larger ones. So these are M8 U-nuts, and they'll just snap into place as well. So, and then moving on to the retained hardware. I do like the fact that they include this extra pad, so that tells me we're going to pick up a little extra clearance, is what I'm hoping, between the skid plate and the motor. So what you'll need to do is they've supplied these hex head bolts here for an Allen wrench. You'll need to just put them in, and I'm going to apply a little bit of thread locker, just like so. And we'll get this first one started. All right, so once I get it started, hopefully that'll make these other ones a little bit easier. Find the hole in the pad. Okay. Putting the thread locker on after the fact so it doesn't come off when I slide it through that rubber adapter. So I feel like that's going to give me a little bit better application. So this one I'm going to have to go ahead and apply the thread locker first. There we go. So like I said, these are just a 4mm hex head. And this one misaligned, so we'll get it lined up and move on to the next step. So one of the reasons I went with Black Dog CycleWorks skid plate, besides the robustness, is the fact that we've got this bracket that you can see here, and what it's supposed to do is hopefully eliminate the failure point. If you look at that bolt that goes through into the motor, and you know, I think that the frame has an additional tab added to it, because it looked like on some of the 790s, this is an 890, that tab wasn't there, and it was just supported solely by the motor itself. But so what this bracket's going to do is it's going to go between your foot pegs, and I don't have it exactly fitted up yet, but so somehow it's going to go between the foot pegs here, and it's going to tie all this in together and just make a much more solid connection point. So so therefore, hopefully, if you hit the peg, you're not going to cause any motor damage. And another reason for installing this skid plate is, if you guys can look here, there's nothing underneath this motor, and you know, if you take a big impact on a rock or something, you're definitely going to cause some significant damage if you get into that pan. So so that's the biggest reason for installing this. So we're going to go ahead and remove these. They're threaded in. You don't need those for the install. So so we're just going to take a pair of pliers and loosen these up and finish up with the install. And just of note, you know, and you can watch the other video if you want to. I'm not sure how I'm going to cut these videos and splice them together, but I'm doing the Arrow mid-pipe cat delete at the same time, because you know, you might as well just go ahead and do both of these installs at the same time if you decide to go this route. Alright, so we're going to start reinstalling the skid plate. The first thing that Black Dog CycleWorks wants you to do is put on the front plate. And so I've positioned it into place, and I've put the tank guards, installed those, and so they're kind of holding it in place right now. And as you can see, I went ahead and put Loctite on my hardware. So what I always do is I typically just, you know, kind of thread things in by hand first, and once I get them started by hand, then I'll come back and tighten them loosely with the impact, and then we will apply final torque as necessary. So let me go ahead and get these hand tightened, and we'll get them in, and then we'll torque them down. Okay, so I'm going to walk you around and kind of let you see what I've done, and it's really, you know, no big deal to do. So I would suggest when you're loosening the swing arm bolt right here to move this out the way that you use a hacking scribe. It's going to make it a lot easier. And one good thing that Black Dog CycleWorks does is they at least provide you the torque specs for reinforcing the unit. So I'm going to loosen the swing arm bolt. I did that on the shift side. I didn't have to loosen it on the other side. These bolts, and take this down, and you'll remove the spacer. And then this plate, or the bar that goes through, as you can see there, the flange will be going toward the back. But so let's take you over to the other side and let you see again. So you can see it here, the flange is going toward the back, and again, there's no use for a spacer. So we took that spacer out, removed it, loosened these two bolts. I didn't have to loosen the swing arm bolt over here. It went in quite nicely. So the next thing or step that they want you to do to install the skid plate is go ahead and you're going to take these and you're going to mount them in the front first. So that's the first thing we're going to do, and we'll get those just kind of loosely tightened, fit the skid plate loosely into place, and make sure we've got everything aligned before we tighten it up. So I'll get started on that and come back in just a second. So I'm going to admit to some bonehead mistakes that I've made with this video. I inadvertently got ahead of myself, put the tank guards back on, and that did not work too well for mounting the lower portion of the skid plate. So I removed those just to make things easier in terms of clearances. And you know, a couple of things that I can tell you. I've heard a lot of people talk about, you know, these skid plates and servicing their bike and things of that nature, and worried about if there's going to be problems. Well, as you can see, the skid plate is supported in the front by these 3 bolts, and so the hardware looks like it's just great hardware with this skid plate, and those are just kind of snugged up. So really all you need to do to change the oil, if you notice, I mean, you've got plenty of clearance here to get to your filter as well as your drains. So essentially you're only going to be removing the 2 bolts in the rear. You can see the holes right there, and so you'll be removing those bolts, and then once you remove them, you can loosen the front bolts up and just let it hang down and go ahead and service your bike. So let's go ahead and get the rest of this hardware put in, and I'll go back and fix my mistake of putting those tank guards on too soon. Okay, so we've installed the Black Dog CycleWorks skid plate today, and we've also did a cat delete, and we use the Arrow mid pipe to replace the stock cat. So I've been trying to keep track of what my weight gain is or weight savings based on the parts I put on. And so with the skid plate change, this skid plate weighs 2.12 pounds, and the Black Dog CycleWorks was 8.68 pounds heavier. So so we gained a little weight with that, but we've got a lot of protection from it as well, and I'll give you a little close-up of that in just a second. Now, in regards to the catalytic on the KTM was 6.08 pounds, and then by replacing it with the Arrow mid pipe, we saved 4.01 pounds. So we had a net weight gain of 4.67 pounds. So do I think it's worth it? Well, I haven't taken any hits to the underpan of the bike yet, but I can tell you this, if you know, we talked earlier about how thick this skid plate was compared to the other one. Underneath, you can see this, it's nice and smooth. There's no bolts sticking out, so very smooth, very clean install. I think it's going to be easy to service. As I said earlier, you can just loosen these bolts up, remove the bottom 2 that you see back here, and then that's going to just drop the pan down where you'll have access to your drains. But one other thing is just look at the clearance. I don't know if you can see that, but I mean, there is a substantial amount of clearance between the motor and that skid plate. So it appears to be an inch plus of clearance. So you're going to be able to take a pretty significant impact to make any type of damage to the engine. So I definitely think that it is worth it based on that, because I really like the clearance that I'm seeing under there. And again, we've got the rubber pad that's at the back. And I don't know, I'm trying to make it where you can see this. Let's get over here and see if you can see it. But so there's a rubber pad in there, and this bracket that we talked about, and that's connecting the two foot pegs together. And then I know you can see the other rubber pad that's underneath there. So lots of impact protection, lots of clearance, and I think this thing's going to be pretty tough. So anyway, hope you liked the video. I apologize, this is my first one, and kudos to all you guys that are out there doing this solo, trying to take these videos, because it made this install take a lot longer, and I don't know how it's going to piece together, but we'll see. Thanks.